Hey, my name is Jack with another build for the 3.26 Secrets of the Atlas Path of Exile 1 League. This time I have a Consecrated Path Juggernaut as the last patch, Settlers, and this patch is also a big melee patch. Melee builds do exceptionally well currently, so I decided to try Consecrated Path, and I must say this is really impressive what I'm seeing here. Let me straight up tell you how it works because this one's a little bit more difficult. So it uses Consecrated Path of Endurance. What this gem specifically does, it converts 50% of physical to fire. It gives us more damage to hits with closer targets, which is important because when you read the description of the gem, it says, jumps the ground at a target location. If an enemy is near where you target, you'll teleport to it from a short distance away. So we'll pretty much always be up close, right? Then 10% more area of effect per endurance charge and 10% more attack damage per endurance charge. This is the big one for the Transfigured gem. So we will be using Juggernaut to stack endurance charges. And we have some things in here that we pretty much use to make this a big build. Most importantly is Echoes of Creation. Late game item comes from Uber Shaper. So from all of the Shaper items, this is one of the, well, maybe it's not as easy to get normal Shaper items, but from all of the Uber bosses, Uber Shaper is actually one of the easiest and fastest to access. So what this does is when you take 70% of life as physical damage for each Warcry exerting the attack. So you might be thinking that's really bad, it's gonna destroy my entire life pool. And that's the reason why we are Juggernaut, is because you can actually reduce the damage you take from this node with armor and physical damage reduction. So the damage we will be giving ourselves with this helmet will be almost minuscule, considering we have like 90% physical damage reduction, 64,000 armor, like and a lot more, right? So then it also gives skill C 30% more damage for each Warcry exerting them. So we will be stacking Warcries exerting as many Warcries as possible. This leads us to a ton of damage, as you can see. We'll be using a two-handed mace, specifically the Imperial Maul for the increased strength is by far the best one. There's some other ones in there, it doesn't really matter. All of the bases are pretty much good. There's a ton of things you can choose from. Most importantly, it's a shaper item for the maximum endurance charge. And then we have Death's Door for maximum endurance charge, and you can corrupt it for another +1 maximum endurance charge, and Ash of the Star, and some other items for some more damage. That is pretty much how it works. Let me go over the tree first. So we start in the order, we are Marauder. So the first things we will go over here, we need this intelligence node together with some intelligence and items to hit requirements. We're going down to Avatar of Fire to convert the remaining 50% that have been converted by the skill gem. Now we have 100% fire. We can scale with both fire damage and physical. I highly recommend taking Nomadic Teaching. It's +2 to all maximum elemental resistance. Extremely good. This tree right here, Vanquisher, gives a good amount of damage. It also gives Crush. So any enemy that gets hit while they're on full life immediately get crushed, reduces their physical resistance together with physical mastery, 10% more maximum physical attack damage, which gives a good amount of added damage. We go over here, we'll be using cluster jewels, as you can see. Specifically, we're using the cluster jewels, which give mace and staff. And the most important nodes are Fuel the Fight, Weight Advantage, Heavy Hitter. And then down here, we have another cluster jewel with martial prowess, overlord, and weight advantage. Weight advantage especially is the best one because of the chance to deal double damage. So these are the nodes that you probably want to go for. If you're lucky, try to roll like an additional suffix, which gives some other stuff on the small nodes. Other than that, it gives really nice jewel sockets, which we'll be using. We are also using Resolute Technique, so we don't have to deal with any accuracy. We don't care about accuracy. We always hit. We can't do crit, but that's fine. We have enough damage. We'll be going to this rage tree basically to pick up +10 to maximum rage. you can get Rage from an implicit on Glove. Right here, it is a Searing Exarch explicit, which gives you gain Rage and attack hit. Try to get this as early as possible. Then the mastery is nearby enemies are intimidated while you have Rage, which is another damage increase. We go over here, we take this with exposure, which we'll be getting through Awakened Fire Penetration, which has 10% chance to inflict exposure on hit. So we have exposure, and this right here is extra fire damage. And then Endurance Charge, Jewel Slots. Again, we'll be taking the Sovereignty Wheel, which gives increased mana reservation a lot. Life, and here we can pick up this Mace Mastery for hits that stun enemies, have Cunning Strike. We have a lot of damage, and this is a slam attack with a mace, so we'll probably be stunning enemies. So we have Call. That's where Call is coming from. Looking at the bottom side of the tree, we go down here and we use Intuitive Leap here in a really good position. As you can see, we get Endurance Charge, Barbarism, we get Juggernaut, and we don't have to travel all the way over here. We can get Measured Fury, which gives us one additional Exert, and Warcry cooldown, so that is super worth it. Down here, this mastery is actually important because of the mana cost of Consecrated Path, and the mana mastery gives mana reservation efficiency to put all of the Warcries with auto exertion in. Over here, damage, Lava Lash, this entire thing adds a ton. Then the Warcry tree also adds a good amount of cooldown recovery and a bunch of buff effect and stuff. Life, the other Cluster Jewel, very important, and Life. And here, the reason why we travel all the way over here is for this Endurance Charge and this Jewel Socket slot. That is pretty much the tree. Let's look at the skill gems. As I said, Consecrated, part of Endurance. It's a Transfigured gem. So run a bunch of lab. You can do it in Merc Lab, for example, so you don't have to do Uber Lab, or you can pretty much very reliably get this. And then if you're lucky, you can corrupt it for +1, which adds a ton of damage actually. But other than that, we'll be using Pulverize for the more meaty damage. This build isn't really affected a lot by attack speed. And the increased area effect is really nice. We had like almost 6 meters, which is really impressive. Then overexertion, we're using a lot of Warcries, and we scale with Warcries, so overexertion only makes sense, right? So we have a ton of Warcries, which gives us a ton of more damage. Awakened Fire Pen, we do only fire damage, so this is very good. Together with Flammability and the fire exposure and hits, we're hitting a good amount of minus resistance on enemies. Then melee physical damage, which you can later turn into Awaken melee physical damage or replace it with Not Gem. And Fist of War without Forbidden Flame, Forbidden Flesh. I'll talk about that later. Then this is what you will probably have in your weapon or your chest, depending on where you have your 6-link. Seismic Cry, Intimidating Cry, Infernal Cry, which gives you Combust. And the Auto Exertion plus an Enlighten. This Enlighten is actually kind of not that important. If you want, you can get a 6-socket and do a 4-link with these, and then another 2-link where you can put anything in you want. You don't specifically need this Enlighten. I just like to have the extra mana, so it doesn't mess with the mana consumption. So I can always use this skill and pretty much spam it, right? Then the only aura we'll be using is Determination, and that's because we have down here Sublime Vision, which gives us another Endurance Charge and 30% increased effect of aura. But we can have only one aura, as other auras than Determination disabled. This actually has an interesting effect because Herald of Ash and Blood and Sand, they don't have the aura tag if you look close. This is a spell stance, and this is a spell AE Fire Herald duration. For some reason, a Herald is not an aura, and Blood and Sun is neither. So we can use both of these for some damage increase. As you can see, actually a good amount. And yeah, that is really nice. Going back here, we have Battle Mage Cry, so another Warcry which exerts. What this does is applies flammability on hit pretty much, so as long as we have these attacks exerted, so very good. Blood Rage is just a way to gain some attack speed and most importantly defense charges that it gives on kill. This little thing for clearing. We have a ton of life regions, so it doesn't really bother us being active at all times. And cast for damage taken, Molten Shell makes a lot of sense, right? We have endurance charges and we are an armor build. This adds a ton of defensive layer, as you can see, like over 50k. Huge defensive layer. Most importantly, Echoes of the Creation self-damages, which activates Molten Shell, the cast from damage taken, because we deal damage to ourselves, right? So this will pretty much always be active. Yeah. And then I guess Blood Sun, Herald of Ash, Enduring Cry to gain some extra charges when you're not hitting, or to gain pretty much whenever you want, gain charges when enemies around you. Fast Attack, Leap Slam for movement, and Berserk since we have Rage, right? Let's talk about the Ascendancies. It's pretty straightforward. Unflinching. This gains us endurance charge when you are hit. Because of our helmet, Echoes of Creation, the self damages us. So this counts as us being hit. So we will constantly generate endurance charges with unflinching through this helmet. So we will pretty much always be at maximum endurance charges. As you can see, it also gives 25% chance that if you would gain endurance charges, you instead gain up to maximum endurance charges. And that is just perfect for this helmet. We go over here, we get Unyielding, which gives us a ton of area of effect and damage. As you can see, we're at like almost 6 meters, which is pretty much the entire screen. And then stun duration enemies per endurance charge, so we stun even better. And endurance charge when we stun, but not that important, we have a ton of endurance charges. We're using Unstoppable, of course, for cannot be stunned, and we cannot be chilled below base value. So even if chill somehow applies to you, even though we are, well, we're not immune, we avoid it, but if it somehow applies to you, for example, through a ground effect, you cannot be slowed below base value. And then we also use Unbreakable for the really nice double armor from body armor, and 50% of armor also applies to chaos damage taken from hits, which adds a ton of EHP for the chaos max hit. If you don't want this, you can also go for Unrelenting. If you want some more elemental and fist max hit, it's also a good choice for sure. I wouldn't go for Unrelenting, I think. I mean, the life region is like a good amount, but I think the EHP from Unbreakable or Unrelenting is straight up better. Then let's go over the items. I've gone a bit of it, but we'll be using two-handed maces, Shaper Mace, for the maximum endurance charge. Try to get this as close to this as possible, as high physical damage as you can, plus the endurance charge is all you need. The accuracy rating is just from the increased physical damage, the second increased physical damage all you can get on a prefix. As I said, Echoes of Creation is the helm that pretty much enables this build. It gives us a ton of damage. It also has some really nice dual-ship. So-called Warcries skills have +1 cooldown use, which we have Enduring Cry, right? Or you can also, if you want, you can take this Falling and you can put it in the helmet and have more uptime on it. Either way, it's really good. Body armor, we're gonna go with a Royal Plate, as highest armor and a bunch of resistances. That's all you need. Searing Exile, go for the +2 to all maximum for EHP, and then physical damage from hits taken is fire damage, which gives us another more physical max hit pool. The gloves, very important that there is Searing Exile Ether items because they gain 1 rage on attack hit, and we also gain life leech through the Ether of Rolls and place it, which gives us 5 damage leeches life. On that, the Dexterity Intelligence craft is important as we have requirements if we go over here. So we're barely hitting a Dex requirement in requirement 98 because of flammability. Then the boots are Death Door, mostly for the +1 maximum endurance charge. You crop them to get another +1 maximum endurance charge for +2 total. They also give some movement speed, all the maneuverism, bleed cannot be inflicted on you, which is really nice, and some strength as well. Ashes of the Star, this is by far the best item. It adds the most damage. There's nothing really in here which even comes close to adding as much damage. We're going for the Anoint Heart of Flame, which is all the way up here, right there. Heart of Flame, increased damage, fire damage, and damage penetrates fire resistance. That adds the most damage out of all the anoints on the tree. Then rings, go for 1 amethyst ring for the chaos resistance with a dexterity roll to fix attributes to hit attribute requirement. Head chaos and chaos resistance roll, however you need it if you have chaos resistance that you have open. And the second, stay pretty much the same on this ring, minus the attribute roll, right? Max the damage. We're going for Stygian Vice. You can get chance to avoid being shocked from an essence. So all you need is the essence. I don't remember which one it is, but you can roll it on a Stygian Vice and then get life resistance. That's all you need, and then you can craft on increased elemental damage with attack skills for some extra damage. And the reason why we're using this is for the Ghastly Eye Jewel, which gives us all elemental resistance if you need it, if you don't get like another useful royal, like some kind of damage or EHP with life. But most importantly, 50% chance to avoid being shocked. You can lower this roll to like 40% or like 41% if you have the highest roll of essence on this roll right here. But it's very important that you hit 100% as we are using Storm Shroud, right? So modifies the chance to avoid being shot applied to all elemental ailments. Very good item. This makes us immune pretty much to all of these ailments, as long as it's not a ground effect. Ground effects still apply. So don't stand ground effects. Furthermore, pretty much straightforward. We're going for an instant flask, but it's not the same instant flask as normally. It is the one that gives you instant recovery when low life. This can be very useful as we have a ton of life regen, right? The suffix can be whatever you want. I would recommend remove curse. Lion's Roar. So this mostly for the damage to knockback. I mean, if anything survives the initial damage of this first hit, it'll be a stunned and knockback, so you can probably just almost immediately hit it again and teleport to it, right? Since we do teleport, the knockback isn't that bad. We will always teleport to the enemy. Then we use the Sulfur Flask for the damage, and it gives us poison immunity as well. Amethyst Flask for the chaos and the increased armor during effect. And a Basalt Flask with movement speed. We are pretty much immune to everything else when it comes ailment-wise. Then I've said 2 cluster jewels with the increased damage and hits with mace. Watcher's Eye. You can use Watcher's Eye, you can use something else. I think the Watcher's Eye is good as it gives like a good amount of EHP if it doesn't really calculate correctly. It gives 50% reduced X damage and critical strikes while affected by determination, and 77% extra PDR, physical damage reduction. So that's a good EHP pool. If you want, you can replace it with like a rare jewel, which gives you some life and damage, or like another unique, which you think you need. There's nothing really big in here which you would need otherwise though, except Forbidden Flame, Forbidden Flesh, which comes later. Then we have a ton of open sockets, as you can see. Just fill them with rare jewels as you need, with like maximum life and 2 damage rolls, most important. Make sure one of them is corrupted, for corrupted blood cannot be inflicted on you. Very important. Then, as I said, Intuitive Leap, which is actually pretty cheap, normally around 30 chaos, so achievable. Sublime Vision, already explained, gives another endurance charge, and this is only use Determination. In Storm Shroud for the avoid elemental ailments. That is pretty much the mid-game setup. Let's look at the early map. I am actually pleasantly surprised at how good this build actually is in the early maps. It actually does a good amount of damage. The rage, of course, doesn't apply, and it's not exposed to fire. So we reach about 250k. If we look at these items, they're all like really, really early on, like starter items. Maybe the Imperium Maul that you roll on early on has even less damage, right? Let's say maybe like you rolled a really badly one. So even then you would get like 150k almost, right? Eternal Burger, the Dex and Intro is really needed to fix requirements. But other than that, all these items, they have life and resistance, and that's pretty much it. If you want, you can get a damage rolls on the amulet. And physical attack damage leeches mana is actually important early on. In the early two, we don't go for Avatar of Fire. We actually take this mastery down here to have 10% remaining fist, which will then mana leech for us for the mana cost. Other than that, the rest is pretty much the same. Just life, resistance roll, and some damage wherever you can get it. Same with the flask, like fix the usual ailments, freeze, shock, right? Poison, and stuff like that. The skill gem setup is pretty much the same. As I said, the Consecrated Path gem is easy to get. Run a bunch of lab and you should have it in no time. Or you can buy it. It's probably going to be cheap. I don't think people really are looking for this gem. They're all going to be looking for the Ground Slam Transfigured gem. And of course, Penance Spend and all the usual stuff, right? So the setup pretty much stays the same. Nothing really needs to be changed. The only thing that really comes big and later is the cluster jewels, which, as you can see, are unallocated right now. And the tree pretty much stays completely the same, except, as I said, Avatar of Fire and this Fire Mastery. And down here, we'll be using this triple wheel to get Champion of the Cause to hit increased reservation efficiency of 12% unreserved mana, so we have enough mana for the skill to use, together with the Mana Regen and the Mana Leech. And of course, more damage you will do if we go up on our melee weapon. We will also leech more life and more mana, as you can see. That's pretty much the early setup. Let's go to the end game. This build actually scaled really nicely into the end game because of two items, and that's Forbidden Flesh, Forbidden Flame. And you might be wondering, what is specifically so good? It's Rage, which adds like 10 million, right, as you can see. And over here, we have Tukohama War's Herald. This is the best option. This option is so good. It doesn't even matter thinking about any of the other options. Like you would think maybe like Aspect of the Carnage could be good, right? Adds like 10 million, like not bad at all. But this one, I think, is by far the best, as it turns your 6-link into an 8-link. Specifically as Fist of War and level 30 Ancestral Call to your gem setup in your body armor. So we'll be changing up and we'll be instead using Endurance Charge or Mini Stun, which would give us 4% more damage per Endurance Charge and stun related stuff, so we get even better in stun. And then we get Fist of War, which is really nice. It basically counts like an exerted attack. So every 1.76 seconds, it gets an ancestrally boosted and deal 100% more damage with hit, which is fucking insane. And 60% increased area of effect. And the other one is Ancestral Call, right? And I wonder how this one interacts with Consecrated Path, because Consecrated Path counts, not Ancestral Call. As you can see, this one supported strike skills target 2 additional nearby enemies, what skill do 1% more damage. So we do 1% more damage, which this one is at level 30, right? So it's 11% more damage I wonder how it works. Maybe it doesn't work because Consecrated Path doesn't have the strike tag. So I don't think that works, but it does give us 11% more damage, which is a good amount. Other than that, the rest pretty much stays the same. Put quality on all of the cries for cooldown recovery. Over here, these +1s don't really matter too much, right? This one, quality, all of these things, most of these things in quality don't matter. You can put quality on Blood Rage for some attack speed. Molten Shell quality gives skill effect duration, so that's really nice as well. Other than that, the rest pretty much all stays the same. And of course, try to get a 2120 Consecrated Path on Don't Jam. In the end, it does add like about 1 million damage. That's pretty much the skills. Let me go over the tree. As I said, we have cluster jewels and stuff. The new stuff is down here. We get this side of the tree, which gives us a bunch of stuff. Since we're stacking endurance charges, we get more armor, more increased stun duration enemies, and increased effect. And the last one gives increased damage and another way to generate endurance charges, which we don't really need, but we will take it. We will go over here and take this one, which gives us a bunch of cooldown recovery for the exerted Warcries, which adds a good amount of DPS, higher uptime on the exerted attacks rate. And when we go over here, we take this double life wheel devotion, which adds a good amount of life padding for 300 total life added. That's pretty much it. You have a bunch of options you could go for on this tree if you want some other stuff. I recommend Soul of Steel, which gives another 1% Elia max rest. And like along this side, here's some more damage. Right here, this one adds like 1.6. Like there's a bunch of damage on this side. You can take the mace wheels if you want to. Adamant, and then over here we can also take Inexhaustible. Maybe you want something from the masteries over here. This mace tree is also not bad at all. It's a bunch of damage. You have a bunch of options you can go for, right? If you want to, but I think what I took is by far like the most useful one. We do have a ton of effective hit pools, so not having like, I don't know, like 7,000, 8,000 life, which a Marauder would maybe have normally, is not that big of a deal, as we have so much effective hit pool. Let's look over the items for the endgame setup. Imperial Maul doesn't really change, but what you can do, try to get the increased attack speed roll as a suffix, and then you can craft on increased damage per endurance charge for 1000 plus PDPS Imperial Maul. Royal Plate, I actually exchanged the implicits of Searing Exarch and Eater of the Worlds with a Warlord item, and this one specifically gives double +1, as you can see, so for a total of +2. You can also use what's it called? Something Lord. It's Skin of the Lord is kind of close to what I meant. Some people, they also take Skin of the Loyal, and they take this and they corrupt it, right? And if you corrupt it, you can hit, for example, +2 to AoE gems, and +1 to level socketed gems, +2 to level duration. Let's say if you get lucky with a double corrupt, you could hit this with a total of +4. It's more of an endgame thing, but I think a Warlord Royal Plate is like the most achievable. As you can see, it has 2 rolls which give quality of socketed skill gems, increased strength, and then the +1 for strength and skill gems, and then life, chaos resistance. You can craft on if you want to. If you miss the chaos resistance, I think it's the best item to get it on. That's pretty much it. Glass stay the same. Higher rest rolls. Try to get added fire damage to attacks, and try to hit the gain 2 rage attack on hit from the Searing Exarch Ecos. These pretty much stay the same. Amethyst Ring, you can get some good amount of additional damage when you hit an essence that gives you gain 10% of physical damage as extra fire damage. Actually, a huge amount of damage increase. As we scale with both, it's like double dipping basically on both of these rings. Other than that, just high res rolls. Sticking wise, same as pretty much before, except high res rolls. This pretty much all stayed the same, except I replaced the Amethyst Flask with Pro Genesis, very endgame item. This will add you another good amount of EHP and also fixes chaos resistance at the same time. If you have this item and you have a good roll of the reduced charge space, increased duration, you will pretty much have this up at all times, right? For these flasks, you, instead of the Lion's Roar, you can also go for a Vessel of Vincta instead if you want shock, right? You will be shocked during the effect, which I'm uncertain if it avoids or not, if it counts differently, but it's an option to Lion's Roar if you don't want the knockback. On that, Sofa Flask with immunity to poison, Basalt with stays the same with movement speed. And down here, as I said, nothing really changed except Forbidden Flesh, Forbidden Flame, which allocates 2 Kohama War's Herald. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. That is the build. This one is looking really good as most media builds currently. I'll be uploading one more video. If you like, leave a like, leave a subscribe. See you around.